the bicycle has always been the vehicle for change, for meaningful connection. And anyone who's a cyclist knows exactly what I'm talking about, even if you don't suffer from the ailments you and I do. You know that feeling. It's 43 minutes, 120 BPM, right? And you start to process. One starts to process. I start to process. It happens a little quicker for me now. And it's a lot more thorough than it used to be, but I understand the power of the vehicle that we have. Like no other, the bicycle has the medicine for us, for all of us. And I firmly believe that if, again, we're going to make it through this thing we call life in our current condition, the bicycle is a key component. And I didn't say those things. Those have been said by greater people. You and I were talking, Susan B. Anthony and Albert Einstein. All these amazing people have been quoted and understand the power of this thing that we have, coupled with the potential for equity and opportunity for those that do not have access to pharmacological interventions, that don't have access to psychotherapy, who can't afford, and our system continues to put barriers in front. We have this tool.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Stable Cyclist Podcast. I am in Minneapolis, Minnesota with my good friend Bruce Martens at the National Center for Youth Development. It's good to see you, man. It's good to be here and not at home doing this. So, thanks for having us.
I'm so grateful that you're here. I honor your work, and it's been a long time coming. I know that we've tried a few times, and for you to come down late last night and stay in my home and then endure a newborn morning with us. I know that you have several of your own, so you're versed in that. But I feel like it's been a few years, and so getting back in, it wasn't too traumatic, was it?
No, not at all. Not at all. It has been a few years since we've had a baby like that in the house. So, but
I'm just fumbling, stumbling, and bumbling my way through it. Thankfully, I've got an amazing wife, and she's taking care of things. So
I don't think any dad ever held the baby for the first time and was like, I know what I'm going to have to do here.
I did the first time, and then he reminded me really quickly that I had nothing to do, or I had no idea of what I was doing. So anyway.
Fair. Well, we are here at the National Center for Youth Development, primarily focused on mountain biking, but bikes in general. And we're going to talk a lot about that as we go, but we kind of always start out zero to hero. You are a kid from St. Peter, Mankato area, and I want to hear about kind of how you got into bikes and, how you became this competitive racer and how that all came about. So.
I'll keep that part short. I found bikes early. I lived out of town, and it was our transportation, early 80s, mid 80s. We lived about 3 miles from town, so if I wanted to go anywhere, that was our mode of transportation. And we didn't have the bikes that we have right now, so it's always seemed like an epic adventure, even if it was only 3.5 miles in. We had to go through a graveyard, uphill both ways,
of course,
generally snowing, and we were barefoot as well, so there was that. I think I found the true essence of cycling as a 10th grader. We were fortunate enough to have a local shop that dealt high-end bikes. One of the owners was a teacher in the school system, so she had a kind of a direct connection to most of the kids. I didn't have her as a teacher, but I was in the scene. So I bought a Timberland, was my first bike, and then I modded it out the best I could on a working man's salary.
Okay.
And then I remember the night I fell in love with bicycles, like in the way that I love bicycles now. And it was a night ride. I was with a bunch of friends, a cool summer night, and we had a good crew, and we were out all night. And we didn't have lights or anything, so we're riding around. And though we were in town, it's a small town, so it wasn't lit the way my city is now. And I just remember the freedom and the magic and the stars and the cool air and how much distance we covered on the bicycles. And I'll never forget that night and how I just fell in love with my bicycle. It wasn't for a few more years that I found racing. I was actually in college at that time. I'd been riding. This is again, mid 90s. So infrastructure was still being developed. We had Mount Cato was kind of our source, and then a few county parks that had some deer trails and whatnot. And most of the time, you're just bombing down bee lines and pushing your bike back up and doing it all over again. And we had some fun. My younger brother rode with me a little bit, and then we had a community of folks. And so it was just kind of a scene that grew in me, with me. And I attended my first race at Mount Cato as a citizen racer, and I won the race. And as you can imagine, that really stoked up the passion. And so for the next decade, I tried to figure it all out. I didn't have any coaching, and following some heroes that are still in the scene today, and some of the names that are still atop the podium, and folks that you ride with up in your neck of the woods, heroes like Jay Richards and Brendan Moore and Jay Henderson and all those crew, the Swanson brothers. And so just a really fun scene. It was grassroots racing at the time, low entry to barrier, lots of opportunities, and they always had a good swag. Gary Soquist was running the scene at the time, and he was my mentor later down the way, but he always did a good job of like bringing together swag, and you'd walk away with your entry worth of prizes if you were lucky. And so it was a really enticing time. At the time also that I found it, the Minnesota series was the largest series in the country. And so we had great sponsors, and it was a really cool scene. And then we lost a few sponsors. The ownership changed hands, and it went. The numbers receded for a few years, which allowed me to really ascend the leaderboard, if you will. The statistics were in my favor at that point, and so again, just kind of working my way through the ranks, getting some minor successes here and there, stoking the fire, and really becoming part of the scene. So it was really nice, and the chicks dig mountain bikers as well. So that was always added bonus. Yeah,
absolutely. So you are, like you said, you're kind of ascending. I meet you for the first time in 2018, and you were killing the marathon part of that circuit that year. And in my very first mountain bike race at Cuyuna, I was coming from the gravel scene. I was really fast in gravel. My friend Ben Olson, who rides for Maple Lag, said, "Hey, you need to just go with Bruce. Like, you're going to race a marathon, go with Bruce." And so I did, and that was back when Cuyuna started fully on the bike path for like, a mile and a half, and then you hit the 3 rollers right away at like 30 miles an hour. And I got on your wheel, and then we hit the first berm, and I went straight, and you turned. And
it's better if you turn on the berm.
Yeah, for sure. But that was my first interaction with you, and by that point, you were starting to have a lot of kids with you as you were doing things, and not like your own children, but you were bringing this gaggle of kids from this area up to the races or throughout the state. When did that transition start to really happen, where you went from like, I'm solely focused on being a racer, I am really competitive, and this is fun, but there's more to this, and let's figure out how to get more kids doing it as well?
Yeah, 2 things. One, my own kid abandoned me, so there was that, and it left a void in my heart that I'm still trying to fill. He's an amazing young man, and I miss him when he's not with me, and so there was a vacuum that sucked in some other kids. I was fortunate enough to be hanging with some parents who were not very good at riding their bikes, and saw an opportunity to pawn their kids off. I was going in the direction that their kids wanted to go, and I had some room in the car, so literally it happened organically like that. There was absolutely no forethought. And turned out I really like hanging out with them. They were fun. They inspired me. They asked great questions. They had a good energy that I wanted to tap into. And so it was not by design. It started with 1 or 2, and then pretty soon I ran out of room. So I needed a bigger boat and started to just kind of to fill the void. I had been working for the National Interscholastic Cycling Association, and I was a co-founder of the Minnesota High School Cycling League, and my job was to train coaches around the country. So I had this gift of traveling around, teaching people how to work with kids on bikes, mostly from an academic perspective. And so I came at it from a theoretical vantage point, but then started to make the connections to what I had been coaching adults on kids and finding it for myself with kids. And so it's not that I hadn't been doing some work, and I've been in the business about a decade at this point, but it really started to I'm traveling, we're spending these immersive, intimate experiences together, and I'm really seeing kind of the research, the data, subjectively and objectively coming out, and I really wanted it. I really enjoyed it. And full disclosure, I am a very skeptical individual as to how much we're as a species going to be able to endure our current moment, and had given up on adults at that point. I had been coaching some adults here and there, and then even working with some collegiate athletes. And it wasn't until I found the high school scene that I really found my people. And at the time, now I've evolved, and we'll get to that in a minute. But in the moment, I was like, this is where I could make a difference. For me, I'm purpose driven. This was never my intention from a career development pathway. I again kind of stumbled into this, and I'm grateful for it. And they gave me the opportunity for that vocational learning, on the job training, if you will. And so in that light, I think, I started to see their success. I started getting better as a result of my riding with them. And anyone who's listening who wants to get better at riding their bikes, go out and hang out with some fast high school kids. You'll get fast. You'll get better. Build into that, like trying to figure out what you're actually doing. You might have a shot. And they were my best training partners, and always ready for the adventure. And then so it started with going to some of those races and the events that you were talking about, and then we started doing some deeper travel. And I found that the bigger benefit, the broader joy, and the most impact for them, and in turn for me, was these trips. And so really taking these multi-day trips into some areas remote at the time, where we had to really prepare and actually train. Not just on the bike, but diet, rest, training for like 5 to 10 hour days out in remote areas. It's a different beast. And so seeing the integrity that these kids came to the preparation with, and the intention that they had out there, and then the camaraderie, just the soul bonding that happened through those, like I had never seen before. I didn't grow up in like camp life or that. I had some experiences where I had seen that, but I didn't have those personally growing up. And so I didn't have any experience with it. And so that was my first time kind of seeing the magic that happens in those moments. And so I wanted more, naturally. I'm an addictive personality, and the good stuff, my brain, that dopamine system really, really goes for, and it was full on. I was charged up. I would come home fully invigorated and inspired to do more. And so that kind of fed the path to kind of like this work here. It's been a transition. I was still very competitive personally. So much so that I was working really hard to not be beat by my student athletes. I remember the day. It was actually a kid from Cuyuna that handed me my first loss by a wheel sprint finish. And then from there on, it was just, that was the metric. It was like, how long could I stay in front before I finally surpassed? And the old adage is true: when the student becomes the teacher, the job seems fulfilled. And so when I started seeing that transition from them being behind me to them in front of me, was really inspiring as well.
So let's back up, and I want to talk about your background a little bit, because basically you have, like, I'm a teacher, and I look at you as somebody who inspires me as a teacher. But I don't think your background was education. Your background was kind of sciencey stuff, correct?
Real sciencey, yeah, like literally sciencey. Well, so full disclosure, I do come from a long lineage of academic professionals. My grandfather was a master's level instructor at the University of South Dakota. His wife, my grandmother, was a teacher. My mom's a teacher. And so I have that, I think, genetically, and also was raised in that vein. But yeah, it was never my intention. And many might say that I should probably not have ever venture down that pathway, especially if you look at my record. I'm always amazed that parents trust me with their children, or even, to be around them. It's a huge gift, and I appreciate it always. Something that I did not earn, at least initially. I've worked really hard to be the best teacher that I can since that. But yeah, so my background is I did my undergraduates in microbiology and chemistry, and then it wasn't until I was well into this work that I went back to graduate school and got an education in behavioral health. So specializing in like co-occurring disorders. And it was partly in response to this. We're all affected, and I see that cycling is probably one of the best and biggest interventions. That's what motivates me every day. And not just for people who are ill, it's for people who haven't been ill yet.
Correct.
And I think getting back to the state of our world right now, I'm hopeful that if I'm not responding to someone's current moment of strife and struggle, it's building the toolbox for when that time comes. So I'm grateful, and I really did. I put a lot of time into learning how to teach. I have a long way to go. And my clientele changes, both the youth in their world, obviously post-pandemic, through the pandemic and post-pandemic, things are very different than they were before. And so it's a new ball game, if you will. I am not the pioneer that I was a decade and a half ago when I first started doing this work. So I've got a lot of folks who are doing a better job that are inspiring me, folks like you, who are professionally trained and doing that work. But yeah, it was something that I saw hugely beneficial, satisfied me and filled my cup, made a difference in the world. Still continues to, and I'm grateful for that. And then it's ever evolving. And for me, I like being on the pointy tip of things, and so wherever there's something new, unknown, there's risks to be taken. Again, back to that dopamine system that I'm so eager to satisfy. Like, this gives me that cowboy kind of opportunities that I really appreciate and I've grown to really enjoy, even when it's hard.
Of course. So you do start working with kids. You're getting more kids racing. You're getting kids on bikes, and at some point you're like, this needs to become to me just with a van full of kids going to a race. And you start this model, this National Center for Youth Development. Correct? Is that kind of the order, or what was the order to where we went from like, I'm just hauling kids to where like, I'm running a program, I've written a curriculum, we are a fully operating business for getting kids on bikes?
Yeah, it was when I ran out of rack room. Like, I was driving a Subaru, the top's full, the back, I had a like one of those like trunk racks. It wasn't even a fancy like hitch rack. So I'm literally, I got bikes draping off the car, we're packed in, it's sagging to the ground, and I realized we needed a bigger boat. It's only as of late, when I came back from working with Nike, and I'd seen I'd been around some really great programs that had been running larger systems of transportation and facilitation. So I don't know that was ever direct. A local guy who had been running a team here in Minneapolis was selling his rig down the street, and I came home and I said, "Wifey, I'm gonna buy this thing," and she said no, and I didn't hear it for some reason. I didn't quite register, and so I went ahead and grabbed that. And then I was in the process of also working for the Lopet Foundation here, realizing that I was going to be able to utilize this thing pretty heavily, and so it was probably one of the best investments I ever made, both professionally and personally, in terms of being able to deliver services. What I've found is that transportation's huge. Our sport is buried in the woods, oftentimes, 40, 50 minutes, hour and a half away for a lot of kids, and they don't have access to the things that we're wanting to do. And this was going to be the way for it to happen. I also learned very quickly that the alternative was that the parents were driving and thus hanging out. And I found that the kids are very different when the parents are around than when they're not. And our magic happens when the parents are not around. And again, we have some amazing parents, and I would not have gotten this far without them. But I will tell you, the secret is truly that kind of that separation. And finding that way where literally I'm sitting in the seat, they're in the back. They have a space that's been cultivated for them exclusively. Yeah. And there are no, I shouldn't say there's no rules, but this is their space. I'm a guest, and I'm grateful for that. And they are free, in that way.
That's a big piece. It's just when we can create those opportunities for youth to be independent and then to be autonomous, fully in control. And it's like, you're going to make mistakes and we'll help you through them. But if you don't, that's okay too. And I
mean, I had to draw the line when they started getting naked in the back seats and sharing that with the unwilling participants in our program down the highway. So we did develop some rules, one being that there's no beef jerky in the vans. The other thing it was, too, is that, like, this is a sport that does require a lot of gear. Whether you're going out for a day or you're going out for a week, we have so much stuff. And I really did appreciate just being able to, like, load a trailer up full of stuff. The food, the gear, and then a place to retreat to during inclement weather. Again, we're out in these remote places, safety being of the utmost. It was real clear that we were not going to be huddling in a close confines of a van necessarily all wet and stinky during inclement weather. And so the trailer suffices for a safety retreat as well in some of those areas. So a lot of this just evolved over time, and now I can't imagine anyone who's out traveling with their family or with kids who doesn't have a 15-passenger van and a 24-foot trailer. I can't imagine how you're doing it. So I always feel like I need more space.
Yeah. Let's talk about those trips. You've mentioned a couple times. Where are you going with the kids? And I want to know, as an educator who's traveled with kids, what did those first trips look like? Versus, I'm sure now they're pretty dialed with how like, well, this is what we need for food. But I'm guessing those early trips might have been a little bit of a mess.
Yeah, well, they're still a mess. I mean, and what's different now is that I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
Like let's see where we're going. We go as far as Sedona.
Okay.
I mean, we're taking long, big trips. Loops to Colorado and out to all the cool places. In fact, I started actually flying with kids, and the reason why I drive now is because flying is a lot harder. When I was working for the National Interscholastic Cycling Association, we used to have the annual awards, and so I would bring out kids to the awards and show them kind of what we're doing, and it inspired both them and me and the organization. And so it was after learning that flying with kids and bikes is a lot harder than driving. You can't imagine the amount of things that are helpful to have that you need and that you don't have or you need to procure when you're on the road. It just was easy to have everything with us. And so that was kind of how it evolved. I started with long lists. I started with procedures and protocol because that's what I was taught to do. Again, I learned by researching ACA, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts of America, like anyone who was running trips with kids, I was reading up and seeing what they were doing. It was also very daunting, like in that sense. And so to make sure that I was instilling a sense of safety with the parents and responsibility, as well as, the kids need to feel safe and supported to garner that trusting relationship, the rapport that was so essential on these. So I had everything dialed. And what I found was the tighter the plan, the less enjoyable things were. And you can imagine, and so the first trips over the first few years were I had a lot of rules. I had scripts that I would follow, and it was roles and a lot of like learning the hard way that it's best to be flexible. Yeah. And so to know what I'm doing is important. For them to know that I know what I'm doing is really important. To be able to deviate from the plan is essential. And to the point where right now I put together itineraries, and this isn't fully true, but mostly it's to satisfy the parents so that they have an insight into what I'm able to do. It's pretty rare I stick to the script. And in part because we have so many opportunities that arise real time. again, I talked about weather being a variable, interest, opportunities. One of the big goals that I have is bringing people together. And so where people are for us to meet is where we like to go. And so oftentimes that requires or mandates a deviation from a plan. Mm-hmm. And so if there's a group of folks riding in a different location than where we planned on going, we're going to hang with our buds because it's better with buds.
Yeah.
Always. For sure. Now I go with a plan. Most of the trips, we've done several times before, and we know how to do them.
Yeah.
We also have people in places. Fortunately, again, there are folks doing this kind of work around the country now, and we gravitate toward those geographics and those regions where people are doing this. What I don't know, there's always somebody there. The other thing is I'm, again, back to that toolbox I was talking about building for them. I've also built my own.
Yeah.
And so, now I have a robust set of tools that I can fall back on, and depending on the situation, I can figure things out. And so our best trips are the ones that were not planned.
Okay.
And again, it's cliche probably for you, but it is true.
Yeah.
We have a general direction, we have a budget.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, we're running on shoestrings. Mm-hmm. We're not for profit, so we try to stay tight and lean. And we've been fortunate. Just super fortunate in that. I think there's a fair amount of luck that has had a huge role in our success.
Yeah. So you mentioned Sedona. I know that you've gone to Bentonville quite a bit. You go to Durango. You go to all these places. As you have continued over the years doing these trips, how has your relationship with those areas developed? Is it like, hey, these are just my homies here? Are there partnerships there now for you? What kind of, because ultimately we're going to start talking about community building as we go, but some of that's like you go visit a place 10 years in a row, you're going to get to know people pretty well.
Real well. And a lot of these places we've had direct opportunity to contribute to the development. So where we go, we're building trails. We've had McLeod's in our hands in Bentonville, building trails at Hobbs and working with those programs. At Cable Hayward, where we go, we're of service. It's one of the key foundational aspects of the work that we're doing is we're giving back to those communities. So not only are we meeting people and having good times, but we're actually contributing to the development. And so that does instill both a sense of connection for them, but also an agency for us. Like we have skin in the game. Yeah. And so it's always fun to go back to places whereby, we cut some trails and we were just in Cable Hayward for the weekend at Telemark Village. 2 years ago, we were cutting the original lines through the woods with the Canva crew, and to see what One Track Mind and Pathfinder has done with those monster berms and those massive runs, for those kids to be able to go back and say, hey, I started that, and now, holy crap, look at this, is truly amazing. And it just creates a whole new sense of investment and a sense of community for them in that way. I have evolved to the point where like we're now abandoning communities, and no knock against Bentonville. Again, I've some of my best friends are there, and we're wholly vested, programmatically, infrastructure, friends. But man, it's blown up. Yeah. I can't even afford to go there anymore. And it's, it's great. It's what we wanted. We when we first started building Cuyuna, the vision was economic revitalization to an area that had been decimated, and so now that that's coming up, it's kind of like we almost shot ourselves in the foot, because we used to be able to go into these communities on that shoestring budget and have a great time, and now it's like, holy crap, I got to charge more, and we start to be less inclusive. The opportunities for massive groups of kids. Sometimes we're traveling with 50 kids. You need an infrastructure that can support that. Camping's tough when you're doing that, and so we rely heavily on Airbnbs, and as they're just more and more expensive. And so we're at that point now where we're actually pulling out of some of those communities we've been invested in for that 10 years, trying to find the new hot places that are undiscovered. And that's also where the adventure is too. And I think a lot of the kids do appreciate, as much as we love that purpose-built flow trail that is just so luscious and everybody can get rad on, there is that like that kind of yearning for the raw, the untouched,
Yeah.
the stuff. Redhead was really good for us those first couple of years, where you could just like go into some of those areas and play for an hour without a line cut for you, and just have some creativity. And so we're kind of seeking those places more and more. They're few and farther between. And again, we need that infrastructure. Whereas I used to be able to roll into a place with 6 to 12 kids and kind of create some space. You can't do that with 50.
Right.
Like, and I need a place to turn the whole rig around.
Yeah.
So it's not as raw and rustic and uncut as it used to be, but that's kind of the evolution where we're at right now.
Yeah. So we are sitting in the National Center for Youth Development, and a lot of people hear that phrase, and then they might see a picture of you on Instagram at nationals with a bunch of kids. And they might just think this is like an elite Devo program. And if you've been around it, you recognize it's not. Spoiler alert, if you sign up to have Bruce on your podcast, he will drag you into the weight room at 5:45 in the morning and put you through it. So I was in this morning with a bunch of adults doing a workout. You have adult sessions. You work with kids of all abilities and ages, and you do have that Devo part where you're going to mountain bike nationals, those kinds of things as well. Yeah. But this is one thing, this is really windy of me to get to, but like one thing I've always valued in you is I see you finding joy in all of those things. The joy I've seen you have with that very elite kid eventually when he beats you versus the kid in Citizen who's like, just wants to get the race over so they can go hang with their homies, to the adults this morning in the weight class. Like the passion's there for everybody. Where does that come from? Why are you able to look at everybody and honor them in that way? Is that just like a values thing? Did it take time to develop that and see everybody equally? How has that happened?
That's a really great question. And I will say it's still happening.
Of course.
It's at the core of everything that we do, regardless of how many national champions we have. Our first and foremost commitment is to the newcomer. And that's really important. It's the lifeblood of our program. It's the person who's most important in the room for us. I was that person. And I never, ever forget where I come from.
Yeah.
No matter how... you said 0 to hero.
Yeah.
I wake up every morning 0. I mean, I'm grateful for the gifts that I've had, and I don't look at those and take them for granted. But I have this inferiority complex to my core that drives me, and I know that others feel that too. And so it's super important. What we do is 3 things, and it's on my van. It's what I tell people when we come in. I keep it really simple, and the key to any organization is a solid mission and an adherence to it and a vision and those values. For us, it's community. And that is most important. I could care less about the results. I could care less about what the goals are. I mean, it's important that we have those and I want to support the kids in those. But at the end of the day, our job is to be part of a community. That is the gift of our sport. And it's what I think we all need as a social species. We need a connection to others, and that's super important. As an aside in this sport, it's not always team. Right? Like one of the gifts that we get is that you don't have to have 9 other people or 14 other people to play it, right? We can go out by ourselves, get better, learn, grow, and have that experience. Like I said before, it's better with buds. I personally believe that. I don't always go out with buds. And in fact, again, I value some of that time alone. But this has given me the gift of community. And that's the thing that we extend to everybody as a group and as an organization. So first and foremost, that said, everybody has an identity, and that's the second piece. It's community identity, so that you're not just a number. When I got a group of kids, whether it's the folks in the room this morning and the people that you were referring to are all stakeholders in our program in some way, shape, or form. These are people who are attracted to what we're doing, and we found a way to connect them to this community in some way, shape, or form that both adheres to and honors their goals and helps us get down the road. So those folks are in here being part of something. And in fact, one of the guys that we were talking about who was very grateful for those workouts as a result of his race this weekend and having crashed and been able to get up, he said he owed that to those strength training sessions that we do early morning. But he was very quick to say also, and the community of amazing people that we have. And this is a person who owns a bike shop in town who's connected to some pretty awesome folks and who is honored for his work. He values what we're doing here. And that is super important. But we also we know who he is, right? And so we're connecting. I start with my littles programs. We put like literally tape on their helmets with their names on them or plates with their names because not only is it important for me to know them, but that they know that they're part of this program. They're not just another person in a group and we're trying to satisfy everybody. There is a place for them. And we're really intentional about that. And then the third piece, and this is the most important when you have a community and people within it, is to make sure that you're connecting them with purpose. And so that's the third biggest thing. It's what drives me every morning when I wake up as a zero. It's the purpose piece, the opportunities that I have, the vision that we're working on. And that's what inspires me. And I think it inspires others that come into this program. Everyone who's part of this team goes through at least a 90-minute goals orientation where I sit down with them, their parents, they fill out a form, and we talk about what they want, what they need, what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. Some of them come in with those elite aspirations, but a lot of them just want to connect, right? And when we first started the Minnesota High School Cycling League, I remember talking to this parent, and they were so grateful for this thing that their kid could finally be connected to. They had tried all the other sports and nothing clicked, and it was this thing. That first, I think it was 2 years, the entire league, it was under 200 people, labeled themselves as the land of misfit toys. Now we were 9 through 12 program. It was very different at the time. These were not elite cyclists that signed up to race mountain biking as a high school sport. These were kids who had been in other sports and didn't make the team. They were cut. And it was very quickly noticed, and we saw our opportunity as an administrative staff. Those were our people. That was what we were here to do. And I stay true to that, decade and a half later. That's my mission, is to make sure that we're attending to that person who isn't the elite. And most of the kids, as an aside, that come in, and I would say, percentage-wise, it would be hard to say year in, year out, but a vast majority of the kids, when they come to this program, they're not elite. But in any way. They are that entry-level person who is coming in, trying something out with a lot of trepidation, tons of anxiety, unsureness, and we support them all the way through it. And it isn't until they feel that sense of community and have that identity and find their purpose that then they're able to excel to that national championship level.
Yeah, of course.
And as an aside, I will say too, our best nationals, we had a gift around the pandemic time where we were in Winter Park for multiple years, which is super conducive to big groups. Our last year in Winter Park, we brought 50 kids out, and only half of them were racers. The rest were coming to be part of the community, to be part of that thing. They weren't even racing. They were out there in support of their friends, being part of the community that was enjoying this travel and this experience. So let's talk. We've said community a lot, right? And obviously, it's what you're trying to build, but it's also like where you live and how that impacts the things we talk about and the things that happen in our communities. And it would be remiss of me to come here and not talk about the next topic, and that is you live like 4 blocks from where Minneapolis basically got burned to the ground after the death of the murder of George Floyd. And where we are right now is not too much further from that. And some people have really moved on from that, and some people don't want to hear about it. And I'm not talking about it to get super inflamed political on it. But the things that happen in our communities impact our paradigm of life, and they impact how we move forward and how we value people. And my in-laws lived in the area at the time. I have other friends who live here as well as you.
And everyone who lived in this area had kind of a reckoning with what is our community, and who is a part of this group, and are we making sure they're a part of this group? And so I just want to, some of your posts on social media during that time, I remember, were really contemplative, and I just want to hear how that experience has kind of affected how you view what is community. What does that actually mean?
My wife and I moved to the neighborhood we're in, which is ground zero during the uprising, in 2015. Minneapolis was home, and this neighborhood was home to us before, and it wasn't until that event that we really realized this is our home forever.
Yeah.
We're here.
Yeah.
I always open, some space whereby there may be something that comes up that's unforeseen that forces a hand, but we're committed to this neighborhood because of the justice that we seek for our fellow citizens. We are very neighbor-minded, but also global informed. And as we become more connected through technology and our travel and again programmatic activities and this beautiful gift that we've had with bicycles, it's so critical for us to be grounded in a community of folks who are like-minded. This neighborhood suffered an injustice, and we stood up. And we continue to stand up. These are the folks that I work for and with every day. And not to put cycling and the work that we do on the same plane as inequality and inequity to folks of color, people of low SES, folks who don't garner and hold power through position. But we are a fringe sport, and we fight hard for the things that we have, and it isn't lost on me that we were given this gift in a small way to make the difference that we can. We are with people who aren't afraid to stand up, to voice the perspective of those who have been downtrodden, and not to accept that this is the way things are. I'm privileged to be a man, middle-class man, who enjoys a lifestyle that I do not deserve. As hard as I've worked, and believe me, I work hard every day. But I have been given so many opportunities as a direct result of my gender and my color in the time that we're in. And I don't take that for granted. I'm surrounded by people who also don't take that for granted. And we were given the gift of the uprising to really solidify who it is that we are, people of our character, right? And so, post the uprising and in this continued rebuilding moment, I feel like that back to that community piece, this is the group of people that inspires me every day, even when it's hard. I walk out my front door and I have to face the folks that if I don't do this work are the next victims of injustice. I look at children as underserved individuals, broad stroke. If you were to look at the data and you see how we treat our kids, the shape of our education systems, particularly here in our city, but broad stroke, how healthcare is afforded or not to them. The latest thing right now is childcare. I just heard it yesterday where, and fortunately, again, I'm sitting at home with a newborn right now in a position where I'm working 2 jobs. I was in here at 3 a.m. doing work. I'm with him all day long because there's no way we could afford healthcare in our current moment. And so we're in this moment where, again, and I can either act or not. And we have chosen a community that chooses to act, that chooses to not accept status quo.
Yep.
And I'm given the opportunity to actually do something about it in my neighborhood. This facility here is located in the heart of that rebuilding and that healing area. I'm adjacent to 2 schools, actually 3 schools within a block and a half, primarily made up of kids that don't look like me, that don't come from the backgrounds that I come from, that I'm blessed to serve. And that's just my direct neighborhood. And then you look at kind of the rings of opportunity within this city, and bikes being what they are. Boy, I don't know that I'd be able to sleep at night, and I sleep well. It's not enough, but I do sleep well when I sleep, and it's as a part, and that hasn't always been the case, by the way. But I sleep well knowing that I'm doing the best work that I could possibly be doing with my time. And if I were to impose a goal for anyone, it would be to have that sense of satisfaction amidst all the chaos and the confusion and the anxiety and the depression and the just the mind-blowing injustice that we have to endure. I'm still optimistic. I'm still
Tell us a little bit. We rode our bikes in today to the lift session, and we went past 2 schools, or 3, like you said. Tell us the work that you're doing of getting bikes and bike stuff in those schools and kind of piloting some things that I think we talked a little bit about last night, but it's just like fascinating to me when we think about bikes as like freedom machine.
Yeah, so full disclosure, I'm doing less and less. Like the actual physical than I used to do. A decade ago, I was literally, getting kids in 3rd, 4th grade, teaching them how to ride. Kids, finding bikes, creating infrastructure, working within the schools, writing curriculum, pounding the beat. Now I'm making sure that, and I know you'll talk about this in a little bit, but in my positions now, it's making sure that resources are afforded to the next layers of folks. So it's less the hands-on. Now I always stay relevant, and I've worked my way down to where I'm with like 4 to 7 year olds. They're my current, like, my people. And I love like just exposing and getting kids out and finding that piece that's so critical for some of these kids. Back to your point, the freedom side of things. Now it's more. We have so many great people working in silos. So my current layer of work is to bring all these amazing people who are doing work around the world together, and not in a homogenous way. I mean, I want every kid's different. And no program is perfect for every kid. Right? And so to collect the magic that's happening and kind of find a way to bring it into a place where it can be looked at, people can see it, and they can start to pick and choose from some of the things that are being done, so that it works for the people that they're serving, and then making sure that I'm bringing those folks together so they're feeling supported, and that's my current work. I mean, it comes back to that community building in broad sense. I'm running a lot more with administrators, and like higher level kind of folks, people who are writing checks and making the big decisions versus hanging out with the kids in the van. I still do a fair amount of that, but not as much as I'd like. And I'm grateful for that work too. But right now, what I see is we've got a lot of great people out there who have well-intentioned. They know how to do some stuff, but they don't know what they're doing. And so my current task is to provide folks with a method that they can embrace. That's evidence-based, it's best practice. That's something that is progressive, so that they can continue to grow as they're working with kids, and that they have a community of folks that they can lean on when things aren't working or they're going south, right? And
so in a school, what does that look like? What does that kind of programming look like?
Well, here in Minneapolis, we're fortunate enough to have at the toppest level a program that serves Minneapolis public schools. And so when a school principal or administrator is committed to providing opportunity within the school, whether it's during the school day or after school programming or through high school racing, we're getting bikes. We're educating the faculty. Fortunately, we're not the only ones doing this work now. We've got here in Minnesota, we've got Bike MN, which is part of the League of American Cyclists. They in conjunction with the Minnesota Department of Transportation have this amazing program that's ready-made, and a group of people who are out disseminating this information, teaching kids how to navigate city streets safely and effectively amongst each other. So that's first layer. We've got some teachers who are starting to introduce their students to off-road cycling, which then comes into more of my realm. And helping the educators. It's always the adults that are the liability. I mean, not that the kids are. They're pretty resilient, and oftentimes, like if you set up the bumpers, they're going to be all right. But man, you see people who really want to contribute, who see the magic and they want to be part of it, that don't have the fitness that you saw in the gym this morning, or haven't made that commitment, don't have the bike skills. Maybe they've been riding bike to the pool or commuting to work, but riding with 35 kids is a very different experience, especially if you're going off-road, right? And so, providing that progressive system through some of the certification programs. I work for the Bicycle Instructor Certification Program, the global standard for certification in the country. It has a method that's grounded, again, in evidence. We've been doing this a long time. It's modifiable. It's progressive. And it's accessible to everyone. We've made significant efforts to scholarship and provide opportunities for folks who can't afford to pay for that certification. And then also we've got a network of folks around the country. In fact, since 2018, we've, I think, certified 6,800 practitioners at a basic ride leader and level 1 certification. And then there are multiple layers on top of that, depending on how deep you want to go in your instruction capabilities. Layered with access and opportunities to continuing education, and then organizations like ours who are doing the work around the country. So that's kind of my role right now. I'm also trying to find ways, again, to connect some of the programs that are growing up. We have now 32 states with high school programs. When we first started, Minnesota was amongst the group that took the thing from 3 to 7. To think that there's 31. But a lot of them aren't connecting with other states. So now it's kind of bringing some of these through parallel programming like ours. We function in the off season so that we're not interfering with the high school scene. The idea would be that folks could come here the way we've been going there, and see what Minneapolis has to offer. And we're working on some international exchange currently with New Zealand, just as of the last week. And so I think the next exciting layer is to share again what is becoming a flatter world for some of these kids, in the way that other organizations and institutions have been doing for a long time. Right? And that's non-competition, by the way. It's just adventure and travel.
So you did mention you are in this new role, or you're taking on this new role, and it involves a lot more of like the helping people get accredited and that. What made you shift from full on here to doing that?
Well, first off, I had an amazing group of people who I've been growing up underneath me to do this work, right? And I think that, in broad stroke, we all should be moving on at some point. And I get bored pretty quickly. Not that I'm bored with this, but in a general sense. So my nature is to experience things and then move on. The data shows 3 to 5 years, in a not-for-profit role, especially as an executive director, which was kind of the role that I was filling in this institution. It's high energy. They're long days, and people burn out. Not to say that I have, but you lose steam, you start to get into the routine, and it's less innovative, right? And so in that light, and it's only probably in my case anyway, is I've only got so many ideas, so in that light, I've exhausted everything that I can bring to the table, and then it's just the next thing. So having new blood come in really helped, coupled with family planning was really important. I'm committed to my work as a father at this juncture, and a husband and a family person. But broader, it's kind of the next thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, so as I've evolved in my roles, it's not to say that I'm the only one that can do it, but I'm in a unique role where I have worked my way through the process and the system, and I'm at this level where, again, I know a lot of people and I've seen a lot of things, and it's incumbent upon me to take that role on. And I'm not a martyr in the sense that, like, you know, I took this thing and I didn't really want it. I cultivated it for sure. With the bike instructor certification program, I mean, it has been the sustenance for my professional development, and I feel obliged and compelled to give back the way I've done with other organizations and institutions. So I'm mission bound in that light. I really believe in the work that we're doing, and I see so much opportunity yet to be contributing to the broader community of folks. There are a lot of people who really need. They're working with kids. They're very passionate about this. I mean, we are an inherently dangerous sport.
Yeah.
And anyone still can come into this with a relatively low experience credential, and have opportunity to interface with some of these youth. And again, I feel like we have got to see kids for the value that they are. And I believe every kid needs the best credentialed person possible. We have that available, and we want to make sure that that's accessible. And right now, the organization isn't necessarily focused on youth development. Most of the folks that come in and the jobs that are out there when you do get credentialed are to do with kids, but there's a lot of folks who are working with adults, doing tour guiding and leading rides and adventures for adults. But like, you're a teacher, you have to have credentials, right? There's a system that ensures both that you're safe and going to be effective. We don't necessarily have that for mountain biking yet, or for cycling, and so I feel like my next mission, and this is where the bike instructor certification program really allows me to kind of realize what my personal goals are, and that is to professionalize our industry. I want people to be paid a meaningful wage for the work that we're doing. We work hard. Again, we're doing insanely difficult work in very strenuous conditions. And I think we should be afforded the opportunity for the best credentials, the best education possible, and supported by a high level, not necessarily from a compliance perspective, but an opportunity to get that information so that we can be most successful in that work. And this is my opportunity.
Yeah, right on.
And so my formal role is Chief Business Development Officer for the organization. We've also functioned much, and this is very indicative of a lot of the organizations that are doing this work. They're a fee for service. I mean, we're in pay to play kingdom right now, and most organizations are heavily reliant on fees for the services that we're providing, but they don't cover the cost of actually doing the work. And so we structured ourselves as a not-for-profit, knowing we were going to need support from communities in that donor and philanthropic realm. I do have programs that are out there trying to function as for-profit institutions, and it is just it's a tough sphere. All youth development, I think, from a fee-for-service, pay-to-play perspective, are constantly struggling to make ends meet, because you want to provide equity and opportunity, but that costs something, right? And so for us, and we've been blessed with a huge donor base, folks who have supported us and contributed, both from internally and externally. The Bicycle Instructor Certification Program, we are a not-for-profit organization functioning as a for-profit business, and so they haven't even tapped into the potential of the not-for-profit. And so what I'm hopeful for, my new role, is to be able to bring in additional resources from that not-for-profit world to what has functioned mostly, or an organization that has operated as a fee-for-service organization. So my goal is to inspire folks who believe in the work that we're doing, who see the value in the community and the development that we're working on. And I think people are inspired by kids, and so bringing that aspect to the organization too is huge. And I will say the founders of the organization and the folks working within it also see that youth are our hope in the world. And so I think it was a unanimous endeavor to bring me on, and I'm just blessed and so grateful for the opportunity to be able to be in this position. All the while, again, it's finite, right? And so my other goal is to create sustainability and scalability for the next person who's coming up.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, and they are coming. I mean, I have some amazing people who are going to be just chomping at the bit to do this work as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we are going to get serious in a little bit, but before we do, for those of you not watching on YouTube, Bruce showed up today in a suit and a bike helmet, and it's like a navy suit with like a plum colored shirt or maybe lavender. What the hell's going on here? It's got a little bit of a Zach Galifianakis vibe.
I like I said at the onset of this, I value the work that you're doing, and I'm so grateful. And I wanted you to know I'm serious. I wanted to show up my best for you and for the listeners. I've seen some of the clowns that you've had on here before, and how can you take people seriously? So this, for everyone who's watching, this is a very serious moment. We're about to get serious. Yeah. So I'm going to take the suit off a little bit because it's already a hot seat. But and then I've also safety first, always, course. Right? Yeah. So if we're going to get serious, I should probably have some safety gear on.
It's all good.
In case I crash. So yeah.
I've never seen you in anything other than bike gear or short and t-shirts. So when you walked in with this, I was like, what? No.
Most of your public hasn't either. Yeah. So this will be interesting. And then I also heard that you're on your way to meet up with Chase Warwick after this. And so knowing that the bar was low coming in, and I had the opportunity to raise it. And Chase, if you're listening, this is the challenge to you. I'm hopeful that this inspires you to take your game up just a little bit more, because we know you've got game.
Yeah, this should inspire everyone to come.
Yeah, so it's in part a referendum on those who have come before me, and an inspiration for those who are going to come later. Chase, I still think you should wear your helmet, especially given your bike handling ability or lack thereof. So, as an aside, there's coaching available for you too, buddy.
Savage takedown, hot take right there.
We'll look forward to his conversation.
Well, we'll get back to some lighter questions in a little bit, but one of the things that you and I connected on. We had raced against each other. Then I kind of disappeared off the scene for about 2 years. 2021, I show back up, and I'm racing in like the sport division against a lot of your kids. Mm-hmm. And
sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I think they were the ones who were sorry anytime it went uphill.
Yeah.
So my old man strength kicked in. So, but at the end of that season, we happen to both be walking in. It's like a dingy, dark stairway. At Buck Hill, I think, for the awards night for Minnesota Mountain Bike Series.
The places I used to frequent, by the way. I love those dingy, dark places.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Well, you were right at home.
Getting out of them, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was like mid-pandemic as well, so we're both wearing masks. And I had just started to really share publicly my story about bipolar and mental health and what it's like and all those things. And you like walked up to me, and you've always been a guy who'll hug me, but you like got super in my face, and you're like, that's the good shit you're really posting lately. And sometime we're going to sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that time is right now, but we have not been able to like sit in person other than like passing or high-fiving at a race since then. And so why did those posts resonate so much with you? And why were you so willing to give encouragement to me when I started digging into that stuff?
Well, so anyone who's watching this that knows me knows that those are my posts too. And it is real. My story, and I'll spare anyone the gory details, but it is one of mental health and despair. The mountain bike saved my life. And I say this in all sincerity and seriousness. If it had not been for bicycles, I would be dead. And I'd been in jail multiple times. Yeah. And the bicycle was the thing, the thread that kept me hanging on. That my mother, God bless her, and later in life, my son. you know, well, you can't live for other people. You got to find that thing. And back to that purpose for me, I didn't choose the bike. I was not a bicycle. I mean, I told you I had early enjoyment and a connection, but it was all in retrospect that I can see what was happening. At the time I was desperate and grasping at straws. I mean, alcohol and drugs and sex and all the things that, you know, we try to fill that void. I had an early trauma. I've got a generational dis-ease, that, and then coupled with an environmental, upbringing that just exasperated my condition. It was cycling, and it continues to be cycling that keeps me grounded. And if you're out there laughing that I am grounded relatively, compared to where I've been before. But you know, so when you started posting those things, and you know, again, these are things that are near and dear to my heart. I could care less about the national championships that we've talked about, or the accolades that we've gotten as a team within individuals, or my personal accomplishments on or off the bike. I am most about the vehicle. The bicycle has always been the vehicle for change, for meaningful connection. And anyone who's a cyclist knows exactly what I'm talking about, even if you don't suffer from the ailments you and I do. You know that feeling. It's 43 minutes, 120 BPM, right? And you start to process. One starts to process. I start to process. It happens a little quicker for me now. And it's a lot more thorough than it used to be, but I understand the power of the vehicle that we have. Like no other, the bicycle has the medicine for us, for all of us. And I firmly believe that if, again, we're going to make it through this thing we call life in our current condition, the bicycle is a key component. And I didn't say those things. Those have been said by greater people. You and I were talking, Susan B. Anthony and Albert Einstein. All these amazing people have been quoted and understand the power of this thing that we have, coupled with the potential for equity and opportunity for those that do not have access to pharmacological interventions, that don't have access to psychotherapy, who can't afford, and our system continues to put barriers in front. We have this tool for wellness. And when used correctly, the data supports it's as effective as psychopharmacological intervention. It's as effective as therapeutic behavioral health interventions, and in mild to moderate cases, more effective than both. And it lasts about the same time. And guess what? It's available to all of us. Now, that's not to say anyone who's on medication, this is not to supplement or to superimpose. Like, you need to stay on your regimens and work with your medical professionals. But there are lots of folks who aren't gifted that access to opportunity, and yet you travel the world, you'd be hard pressed to find a community of folks who does not recognize the bicycle. Right. And in this moment where, again, you know, organizations like Free Bikes for Kids and some of these community groups, whether they're faith-based or whatnot, bicycles are available in a way to people in a way that they have, you know, is unique to our time. I really believe, and it's been my experience, that we have this amazing, again, tool in our toolbox for those that need it. What was the question? The good. You know, so when you started, you know, and here's the thing. I love people who love bikes. And I love people who get it on a superficial level. Like, that's not to knock anyone. But I hang around for these moments. I hang around for the moment that you were in, when everything else is on the line. You know, whether it's your family, your career, your personal wellness and health. That's where this thing really matters. And where I come from in my space, when I, like, that moment that I wake up again as the zero, that motivation, the go-to is the bicycle. Right? That's my tool, and I can impact in a way that I have no other. I have nothing else. You know, like, I'm not super smart. I don't have global travel experience. I'm very not wealthy. But I have this thing, and I have this experience. And when you started to share your experience, as much as I am embraced and really valued you as a friend and as a fellow competitor, when you were actually starting to see the potential that this had for you personally on a very deep, personal, serious level, that's when the magic starts to happen. And that's when those relationships really happen. And I knew, through your posts, you were not just saying things. Right. You were experiencing what we experience. Yeah. And I want to be around people like you.
Yeah.
I want, not that again, anyone who wants to ride bikes with me, man, I'm down. Yeah. But when time is finite and energy is precious, and I have work to do. Yeah. This is the work. Yeah. And so back to this organization, my motivation and the affiliations that I make, it's with that deep understanding and that personal experience whereby like this is serious. Yeah. And you suffered a serious injury and you were on a serious path to recovery and it uncovered so much other stuff. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But yet. And it was yours, not mine. I didn't know. I couldn't know. I can't know, right? But I can share what has worked, and it's available whenever, and it works. Yeah, And so when you started posting on that, you became part of a broader community that I'd been really advocating for. It's the folks that I wake up for and put my time into. And I felt a deeper connection to you. And so even since then, and as a result, here you are like taking this message to the masses through this work that you're doing. I'm apologizing in advance for my inability to support you on the level that you should have it. There are so many great people out there that will continue to build up your effort and bolster this movement. I'm just a piece of it, but I will say all of that work is absolutely the work that needs to be done. Yeah. And there aren't enough of you doing this work to impact the need out there for the folks that are suffering the way we are. Yeah. And that's not just from a physical ailment, it's psychological and social as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think those things, and again, back to the bicycle, you could be all by yourself and it's right there. The best thing about the bike is you can let it sit, you can mistreat it, you can, and it'll always just be there, right? You can put it down for years and you can pick it back up and it'll love you just the same. Yeah. Not many friends will do that for you. I mean, again, my mother and my wife at this point, but those are two people out of the millions that I've met who I think I could count on the way I count on my bicycle. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, incredible. Thank you for your kind words there, Bruce. I got a couple fun questions for you. The first, the mythical Eddie Binsfield has asked me to ask you about how do you back a 24-foot trailer with such skill? How did you learn to do that?
Oh, well, he's lying that there was any skill. So funny that you say this. I had to move the van on the street yesterday, and my neighbors were watching me with their children. I was able to execute mostly because I had some sleep and the adequate amount of coffee. Yep. And I wasn't not out on the road with 50 adolescents. That helps. And I was able to do it masterfully the way you said. There are many times I've hit vehicles, I've taken out gas pumps middle of the night in states that I will not state because they're probably still looking for me. So it's not always been masterful. Eddie has a tendency to exaggerate things. Okay, sure. So this might be one of them. That said, gosh, just like everything you practice, and nobody taught me. Yeah. Like I didn't grow up with boats.
Had to figure it out.
Holy cow. Just like everything, Thank goodness for marker lights. And I started with a 16-footer. Okay. So, yeah.
Oh, that's not quite as bad.
The other upgrade that I made, and this was only recently, I kicked myself for not having done it earlier, the extension mirrors. Yeah. Good tunes, always. Super helpful, and again, not having a pile of naked adolescents in the backseat helps a little bit. So,
well, speaking of all those adolescents, when I was racing sport category for that year, I would spend a lot of time around finish lines with them, and I heard rumors that you do 100 push-ups per evening. Is that correct?
Well, that's dated. There was a time.
Sorry, it was true at one point.
It was true, and it was not every night. It was like 5 nights a week. And it wasn't 100, it was 1,000.
Oh, of course.
And I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
So early in my training career, I was a counselor working the overnight.
Okay.
And after, I would do about 4 hours worth of chart review and kind of just, checking up and making sure everything was on the up and up for the organization. But then the name of the game was staying awake in case a client needed something and whatnot. So and each unit that I was working on had some sort of fitness equipment for the clients, and if they're all sleeping, gotta make sure so I would run and do push-ups and sit-ups and anything to stay awake, and so I found myself really infatuated with push-ups. They're cheap and effective. You can do them anywhere. They don't require a whole lot of space or equipment, and it is amazing how quickly that, again, back to that dopamine system, a few reps or sets of 20, 30 push-ups can really invigorate somebody, especially when you're starting to tank. So, it wasn't 100, it was 1,000. Hundreds of
straight
amateur hour.
Straight Herschel Walker on the situation.
But, I've got this amazing gym now, and I'm going to tell you right now, 100 push-ups, how are you going to keep up a physique like this? With 100 push-ups a night, Eddie, come on. I think that's his ailment. Now, if Eddie were able to actually do 100 push-ups and maybe even endeavor on 1,000, he might have the potential.
46-year-old.
Well, again, I didn't wake up like this, so it's going to take some effort.
Yep.
But,
for those listening, the shirt has officially come off.
We're naked now. And I still have my helmet on just in case. But so the barbells, I would advocate once you've hit 100, add some weight. Not instilled in me early on, but God, I wish somebody would have told me just add a little weight and you can bring those reps down.
All right, right on. Okay, you can take me to any mountain bike place in the United States. Where are we going and why?
I get asked this all the time. And I've been to all the great places in the country, and I love them all. Each is different and unique in their own way. And I say this in whole earnestness. The urban shreds are the best, right? I love single track, and I love being in the woods, and I love all the trails that get built and all the things. But dude, roll out your door. Right, you don't need, and as fun as it is to load up in the van and go to these amazing places, and the travel is just as much fun as the riding and the camaraderie. But man, every city has got something awesome. Go out, and this is where some skills and some creativity, get with your buds, go out at night like I talked about. It's an entirely different experience. I would say, to answer your question directly, out of all the places that I've been, I really want to get back to Grand Targhee. It's just on the Idaho-Wyoming border.
Yeah, sure.
And the views of the Tetons are spectacular. And I was able to spend a couple of days there. This would have been 2016. I really want to get back there. And I've got no reason to be there. So it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Yeah. But I mean, just the views. You got some lift serve. The trails are amazing. People are great. It's remote, right, and it's affordable, which is really important for us. Second to that, gosh, I mean, I feel like, and I even posted on this week, trying to keep what we have here a secret. But man, we've got it going on, don't we?
There's amazing stuff here.
Everything from southern Minnesota to the North Shore. I mean, we have so much good. Here, the next trip we have planned is a full iron range where we start in Cuyuna and we work our way up and we finish in Lutsen, and we get all the great iron range trails, just a full broad from point to point to systems that are almost unrideable. We've got it here, and I will tell you my favorite in the state, and depending on when people are listening to this, it's bound to change, but it's been consistent for about 2 years now. I really love Jackpot.
Okay.
In Tofty. That system, it's 12 miles out and back. If you do it out back, it's 24, but it's got everything, and it's just beautiful, and anyone can ride it. You can go as far as you want and turn around. It's great.
Yeah. Well, and I love where you're from. I love Mount Cato. It's just, it's kind of choose your own adventure going up, and for sure you can choose your adventure coming down depending on what you want. So it's a good time.
I want to say it again. Like, look, the more we build and the greater everything gets, like, don't ever take for granted the little stuff you have in your backyard.
Yeah.
You know, I love like cyclocross for that reason. Like, you can create your course.
Yeah.
When I first started launching leagues and starting teams in these small communities that didn't have trail, they were like, how do we build a mountain bike team when we have no trail? And I'm like, get creative.
Yeah.
You know, like, what is trail but somebody's imagination, you know, imprinted on a geography. Like, you got some tape, you put up some marker flags, you know, give the kids a soccer, you know, chalk paint can and let them go, you know.
Figure out where the animals are walking. That's a great starting point.
Well, and honestly, they do pick the best places, don't they, right? Follow the water is another one. Like, water goes down and it finds interesting. There's just, you know, when I first started doing this work, the opportunities were finite. You know, it was IMBA was the thing, and you had these you know, amazing systems, and then a lot in between there was nothing. Man, there's just so much out there. Yeah, I probably haven't even seen my favorite yet. I look forward to it.
Exactly. All right, last question. We're gonna pretend that we go on a gravel ride somewhere. And my favorite thing to do on a gravel ride is actually to find a gas station. Tomorrow and I, Chase, are going to go ride to a quick trip.
Sure.
But you and I are riding somewhere. What are we getting at that gas station? Or what are you going to get? What's your beverage of choice? What's your food of choice at that gas station?
So everybody who's traveled with me knows I don't even go into the gas stations. So when I'm gassing up the van, I've got this bottle in the back that's silver. Don't ever drink out of the silver bottle in the back of my van. I try to avoid the gas stations for a couple of reasons. First, I can't afford it. Like, everything's so overpriced. So, and I'm not sponsored the way Chase is. So Quick Trip isn't subsidizing my gas station stops. I need to check into that. Maybe we could work something out. Certainly we're making them a lot of money, because I do, back to Eddie Binsfield, known to spend $30 in a heartbeat at every gas station stop. Kids love him. He's everybody's best friend. If I were to go into the gas station, it's the oldest coffee on the pot. Is my beverage of choice. Right? Straight up. Tap water. I'm just filling up out of the tap. My favorite is when they try to charge me for the water out of the tap. I'm like, no. So first it's the darkest, oldest coffee, and then next it would be just the tap water. If I had to purchase something, I'm on a ride, huh? I'll come back to it. Probably an iced tea or something. Some little sugar, a little caffeine. My food of choice, back to right next to that old coffee, is whatever's rolling on the thing.
The roller dog.
Yeah, like, I mean, on like taquitos.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Something like that. Now I don't buy them, but I would.
Right.
If I did.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
If it's not that, it's M&Ms straight up.
Gotcha.
And then a Pop-Tart fits real well in the back of your jersey, and given some time, especially on those gravel rides in the sun,
it's
almost like toasted. Yeah, so they're great. And then what was the other thing? Pack of smokes?
No, we're not. No. That would be bad for your lungs, man.
So the gas station thing, you know, what I do value about gas stations most is that they are so out there, like they're the one reliable thing on a ride. They oftentimes have some shade. And I like the hoses in the back. Like, I'll just go and, like, you know, dump. And I've had plenty of gravel rides and road rides where we've been out remote areas and reliant on those as resources. And I don't even need gas stations. I'll go up to a random farmhouse as long as there's not a dog charging me. And
rural churches, they always have a good hose.
Although, again, not as readily accessible as they used to be. The doors are locked in a way that, you know, we used to be able to rely on them a little bit more. So those of you who are church owners or operators, you know, unlock those doors. Like, we're relegated to gas stations right now. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the EV. Like, do we still do gas stations, or what is there kiosks now where we have to, like, buy our vending machines that are adjacent to that? Like, what happens when,
I don't know,
when we're no longer needing gas? Does the station survive?
Well, we still need the convenience of the store.
True. Correct.
Well, Bruce, this has been awesome. I appreciate. I think I'm your first. Is that correct?
Podcast?
Yeah.
You're my best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Josh Blum might have beat you to it once or twice.
Okay.
There are a few out there, but those are old, and this is the freshest, best.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Awesome. Right on. Well, I appreciate everything you're doing. I so respect you, and I just love even watching you. And I posted on my story this morning on Instagram, like, I've never seen you not teaching. Like, you're always teaching. My son is with me. He's running the switcher and the board for us, and you're teaching him how to make pancakes this morning, and you're teaching the neighbor kids how to do stuff, and it is so inspiring to see. And I just thank you for letting me come here and
you're so welcome.
Talk with you, and I appreciate you and love you, and just it's good to be here, man.
Do we hug now?
It would be very awkward through our microphones, and you're shirtless, so
Let's just pretend.
We'll pretend, and
then.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for listening, and please reach out. I'm happy to be of service. Anyone who's found any value in the things that we're doing or has questions, I will definitely pass you on to the right person.
How do people locate you?
I'm out there, right? Like on the socials, I'm there. My email address in current form is bruce@nationalyouthdevelopment.org. You can reach me at bruce@icp.bike, or you can give me a call. I'm old school that way. I really like a phone call. So email me. I'll respond with a signature, and let's have a conversation.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And a bike ride.
Yeah.
Because that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks for watching our conversation with Bruce today. If you are watching on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go give us a review, please, and thank you. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, the Q&A option for the episode is now available if you scroll down. So if you've got a Q&A for the upcoming Ask JP Anything later this month, be sure to write it in there, and we'll be sure to see it. Finally, the Stable Cyclist Podcast is a weekly-ish show that publishes every Friday morning and comes out Friday mornings at midnight on the audio platforms, and it also drops on YouTube at 8 in the morning, usually on Friday mornings. Stable Cyclist Podcast is a show where we again talk about bikes, mentality for life, and when the occasion arises, mental health. Thank you so much for hanging out today. And most importantly, remember, you are loved.